Hello, everyone. Welcome to Food Addiction Reset Television and the Wednesday broadcast of Hidden in Plain Sight, Food Addiction. I am Joan Ifland. I am a doctor of nutrition specializing in food addiction. Many of you know me from our Facebook group, Food Addiction Education. Some of you know me from our online programs, the Home Addiction Reset Program and the Daily Addiction Reset Community. And then some of you know me from my book, my textbook. So this is a game changer, this textbook, Processed Food Addiction, Foundations, Assessment, and Recovery. Why is this a game changer? Because this book is built entirely from scientific evidence, and it just lays to rest the question of, does food addiction exist? Yes, it exists. There are about 2,000 studies referenced in this textbook, and I looked at around 8,000 studies to write this textbook. So the discussion is over. The disease exists. It's a vicious disease. It's very, very serious. It's very hard to find help for it. And the subject of this television series is, why isn't media writing about this? If this is an explanation for the obesity epidemic, which the evidence says, yes, it is, why are we not hearing about this in the media? And of course, there's a simple answer. And the simple answer is because media is almost synonymous with the processed food industry. Media makes tons of money from covering up processed food addiction. And if we ever got general public acceptance and knowledge about processed food addiction, the processed food industry, in my estimation, would shrink by about half. And that means that media would shrink considerably. So yes, okay, we get it. Media has to cover up processed food addiction, but does media have to promote processed food addiction? And I think the answer is yes, because if it didn't promote processed food addiction, if it didn't stimulate processed food addiction, we would be able to recover. We would be able to get control of our food choices. We would be happier. We would start spending a lot less money on processed foods because it's not something that we actually want to be doing. Many food addicts write into Processed Food Addiction, the Facebook group, every day. I want to get control. I don't know why I can't stop. Hello, Marcia Johansson. So glad you're here. Speaking of food addiction warriors, Julie Bennett is here, another one of our warriors. So we are going to talk tonight about how media does this. So I don't think anybody opens up their news feed or their newspaper and they say to themselves, oh, I hope I'm stimulated into overeating today. If we knew that by opening up the media and reading it at face value, we would be stimulated into overeating, we might approach the whole thing quite differently. So this program is about empowering you, the viewer. This program is about teaching you how to read media and when to avoid media altogether. So I collect these articles from the New York Times, from MSN typically. These are major news organizations. And you would think that a publication with the prestige of the New York Times would have our interests at heart. They have their financial well-being at heart. They want to continue to thrive and be profitable and grow. And that is all about advertising revenues. It's all about advertising revenues. And advertising revenues depend on people eating processed foods and overeating processed foods. We go back to this statistic that Americans eat almost twice the number of calories that they need, day in, day out, every day. Men, women, and children. So if you see that the processed food industry needs to continue to persuade us to eat twice the number of calories that we need, then you see the role of media. Media has got to work on that day in, day out. They have to be constantly stimulating us into overeating because that's where their revenues come from. So this is often a really surprise. This is a big surprise. Hi, Cindy. Cindy, so glad to have you here with us. This is an enormous surprise for many people because we want to trust these outlets. We want to trust these news outlets. We want to be able to open up these sources of information and know and feel like what we're reading is true. So if you learn how to read media and you learn how to evaluate these stories and you learn how to kind of like get behind the scenes and see from a neurological standpoint, what are these articles really doing? What are they perpetuating? What is happening inside of me when I read these articles? Once you get that, you can be safe. You can be safe. And I think you could probably start skipping over some of these articles. You will learn to recognize, for example, anything that's got weight loss in it is a perpetuation of old, discredited ideas. We know from the research that weight loss approaches don't work. And we see a lot of reasons why they would actually make food addiction worse. So you see these articles, you might say to yourself, well, Joan, but I see all the articles all the time telling me to eat less. So how does that fit in with your theory? Well, if you eat less, we know from research that stimulates worse cravings. So, okay, maybe you can eat less for a few hours, and we're going to have some examples of that kind of advice today. But after that, then you're going to overeat. What happens when you eat less is that you frighten your brain. Hi, Donna. Hi, Donna. Thank you. So glad to see you. Hi, Danita. So glad you guys are here. So when we get this advice to eat less, we are actually frightening our brains. So maybe we eat less for a couple of hours because it's so uncomfortable, it's so painful, it's so stressful. And then our brain kind of takes over and says, excuse me, it's time to eat. And because it looks like you don't have enough food, I'm going to get you to eat extra. So it's not a neutral thing. It's not like you skip 500 calories at breakfast and then, you eat 500 calories in the evening and you make up for it and it all comes out evening. No. It does not come out even at all because you frighten the brain. And now the brain thinks maybe there's not enough food out there, so I better get my human to eat extra. I better get my human to put on some extra weight because maybe a famine is coming. So it's not a neutral event. Whenever you see anything that suggests that you eat less, you're being set up to eat more. And the other thing that happens is that when you eat less for some period of time, your brain really starts to direct you towards the more calorie-dense foods. So it says, if a famine's coming, if there's not enough food out there, I'm going to make sure that my human reaches out for the most caloric foods, for the most fattening foods. So there is this shift. There's this terrible shift that happens when we don't eat enough And we're going to talk about how this article in MSN sets us up for that. So this is actually our first segment, is one of 4 segments that we're going to be doing. This is the second one. We'll do it for 2 more weeks. It will be in the newsletter. So Julie will post the link to the newsletter. You can read what I'm talking about. We have a blog at foodaddictionreset.com, but I think it would be better if you got the newsletter in your inbox. So Julie will post the link to sign up for the newsletter. So we will be doing this. This was this massive article in my MSN feed that was titled 30 Weight Loss Tips. Every one but 2 would actually cause weight gain, in my opinion. So the true title of that article should have been 28 Ways to Gain Weight and 2 Ways to Control Your Appetite. Okay, so we're going to have a really close look at this. This is segment 2 of how to 30 tips to lose weight. Okay, then we have a second segment that is quite mysterious. It was very odd to read this article. It was published in the Telegraph in the UK. It's a UK paper. And I'm going to give you the headline of the article, and then we're going to talk about what the article actually said. And it's not what the headline is. The headline is "No Firm Evidence That Diet Protects Against Dementia, Government Scientists Conclude." Well, when I see an article like that, I just want to scream, because I just realized I'm supposed to be putting in my microphone, and otherwise you guys are hearing echo. So I'm just going to take a second and fix this so that you guys really hear well. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, I think that's going to be better now. Sorry. Okay, so when I see a headline like that, it just makes me so upset, because what it's saying is the processed food industry would like to condemn our elders to years and years of dementia. So we have a special obligation, I think, to the people in our lives who are growing old, to try to educate them about how processed foods cause dementia and cause Alzheimer's, because that is tragic. That is really, really dark. The processed food industry knows darn well that processed food, chronic, repeated processed food consumption, definitely alters brain function in a way that eventually means that people have no memory. They don't know who they are. They don't remember us, their loved ones. And that is incredibly tragic. So when I see a headline like that, oh gosh, I'm going to stop and I'm going to read it. And okay, I'll give away the punchline. The article itself says something quite different. So we're going to talk about that mystery. Why would the headline be so different from what the article says? The article says what we all know, which is that processed foods and diet have a profound impact on mental health. Profound. Okay, so that will be our second segment. And then we are going to talk about something that started to come up a few weeks ago that really shows the processed food industry has such nerve. They have such nerve. There are words for this. They have chutzpah. They have gall. They are horrible. And what I'm going to talk about is of course, we know they do terrible things, like they put toys in toxic food meals. The fast food restaurants, they put toys in so that children will buy the product. They will nag their parents to buy the product. And then the children will actually suffer brain loss and fatty liver and heart disease from eating those toxic foods. They don't care. Let's put a toy in there. Let's put a cartoon character in there. Let's put a superhero in there, and we'll get those kids to buy this product. Now, of course, we know that for a long time, women have suffered disproportionately from processed food addiction because we are in the food environments. So we are the targets of their advertising and their availability. We are in the television advertisements. They've been focused on women for a long time. So as you know, if you read media, we had International Women's Day last week. And in celebration of that, the food processors brought out products that were specifically for women. Oh, like they haven't oppressed us enough. The irony of it is just beyond imagination. They have exploited us. They have lied to us. They have distorted our reality. They've sold us toxic products with the label healthy on them. It goes on and on and on. We now have an obesity epidemic. We have a depression epidemic. We have all kinds of illnesses that come from these practices. And then the food manufacturers want to manufacture products that honor women and change their logo so that they are being recognized as supporters of women. It is the height of irony, and we are going to go into that. That will be segment 3 today. Now we're going to talk in our section on research, missing in action. So this is a section that lets you know really important research is coming out. Groundbreaking research is coming out. Life-changing, life-saving research comes out all the time, and the media just ignores it. So this is your dead giveaway. The media does not want you to know how to stop your overeating. And so we are going to look at a research report regarding a program for bariatric surgery patients. I'm going to use the word patients instead of victim because I'm going to try to be a little diplomatic here. I might fail. Okay, so let's get on it. I'm very glad to see you all here. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, let's look at our weight loss tips first. So as I said, this is an article in MSN. It's we're doing a 4-part series on this article. The article is 30 tips for weight loss. And today I'm going to cover 4 weight loss tips that if you followed them would make your food addiction worse. Now, I picked these out because they start out great. So the first part of the sentence is, oh yes, we should do that. The first part of the sentence is something that we would teach in the Home Addiction Research Reset Program. We would teach this in the Home Addiction Reset Program, or we would teach it at the Daily Addiction Reset Community. We would teach this in our programs. And then there is something at the end of the piece of advice that renders it horrific. So you could follow this advice perfectly, but because you're not among well-intentioned people at the HARP and the ARC, you're among very well-intentioned people. I want to give you all the support, all the information, all the education you need to actually get control of your food. And because I have looked at somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 studies, because I took 3 years and wrote the textbook and edited parts of it, we have a very good idea. The science is very on target, very on point about what we actually need to do. So this is going to be great. you're going to see the difference between how media approaches a bit of terrific advice and how the HARP and ARC would approach the same advice. So here we go. The first bit of advice is cook at home. Now, I cannot tell you how important it is to cook at home. It is the only way that you know what is in your food. It gives you an opportunity to give yourself full portions. And full portions are a protection against overeating. So full portions of very, very healthy, unprocessed, full fiber food will protect you. And the only way you really know that you're getting that is if you put those meals together yourself. 22 years ago, 1996, when I started teaching people about this, I would not have had to say that. I would have said you could eat out of this restaurant, that restaurant, and the other restaurant if you order this, this, and this. But today, there are new products on the market that restaurants use, and I no longer really feel confident about recommending restaurant food. For example, soy oil has replaced a lot of oils for restaurants. So you can't eat sauteed things anymore, except in really, really high-end, expensive restaurants. So I do. I'm very dedicated to teaching people how easy it is to make food at home. And you all know that this year I brought out a little book, very simple, very straightforward, very easy to read. It's the Food Addict's Meal Prep Manual. And it just shows you how you can make all your proteins and all your starches in a few hours on the weekend, and then get started cutting up your vegetables and fruits for the week. It's easy. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And I would also recommend Julie Bennett's book, which is a guide to the Daily Addiction Reset community. And she has a very wonderful writing style, very easy to read, and she will walk you through how to get started on this wonderful journey. So I know you're sitting there, you're thinking to yourself, okay, Joan, if you think we ought to be cooking at home, what is your big problem with the advice that MSM is giving to cook at home? Can you guess? Can you guess why I'm having a bit of a problem with MSN's advice? It is because they recommend cooking addictive processed foods at home. So you just think, oh, great, well, I'm going to start cooking at home. That'll take care of everything. And oh, look what they're recommending. Oh, well, I like those processed foods. So that's great. So if I cook those processed foods at home, they're okay. That is the height of deception. They take you down the right road and then, they drop you over the cliff. So I hope you see that even you might be pulled in. You might be reading an article like this and you're saying, oh, well, in the HARP and the ARC, we learn to cook at home. And Dr. Ifland tells us to cook at home. And this article says to cook at home. So this article must be okay. It must be one of the few that are actually okay. Oh, no. The hook is in there. The thorn, the barb is in there at the end of the sentence. Okay, let's do another one. Here's another great piece of advice. It says to eat every 4 or 5 hours. And I am like, yes, finally some good advice. Oh, I like this. And we know that if you go too long and you let your body get hungry for too long, it sets us up for extra cravings. And we will be overeating in the evening. We might be able to get through the day, but you go home, that food is available, you're cued to binge at home, it's your binge place, boom, you've lost it. And you're wondering why. Oh, is it my childhood issues? Am I an emotional eater? No. You just had a stretch during the day when you didn't have enough food, and now your survival instincts, base back here, are telling you to eat and eat extra. Okay, so I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wow, this is great advice. And then they say, if you need to, have a snack. Guess what the snack is? The snack is a highly processed, highly addictive food And so you would read this advice, you say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure I eat every 5 hours, and I'm going to have one of these snacks in between. Well, of course, that snack just kicks up those dopamine pathways, it kicks up the stress pathways, fogs out the frontal lobe, you get high, you get crash, you get adrenal glands and pancreas kicking in to try to keep your blood glucose stable, and you're just all over the place. You crash, you finally get home, you've been up and down because you're eating this highly processed snack, and then you overeat at night. Well, it might not occur to you that that advice was incredibly bad advice, that advice set you up to do that, because that's profitable for MSN. If you overeat at night, that helps their advertisers and that keeps them going. It's so cruel. It's so cruel. So they set you up, they say, do this, this will work. You go home at night, and of course you overeat. And then we blame ourselves. We internalize self-stigmatization. I am such a failure. Here this is, I'm reading this great advice and I can't follow it. What is wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with you. Your body is reacting exactly as it should react to this kind of horrible advice. Okay, let's do the next one. The next one is eat soup. This is fantastic advice. This is fantastic advice. Eating soup, you get a lot of fluids, it improves your circulation, you've got enough water to make blood and hydrate your whole body, including your brain. So you're just feeling great because you've gotten a lot of fluids and you've stretched out your stomach. So you do feel fuller. We all know that a stretched out stomach releases serotonin, which does travel to the brain and attach to serotonin receptors. And we feel good. We feel full. We feel satisfied. So I like to stretch the stomach with fiber and fluids. So soup is great, especially soup that has, some vegetables that are still a little bit crunchy and, high fiber starches like sweet potatoes or rice. Well, great. They started out okay. They started out great. That's a great piece of advice. But then what do? The example that they give includes boiled glutinous white flour, i.e. pasta. So you begin to see this pattern here. You begin to see this pattern here of putting out this great advice, but making sure that there's a little twist in there that would prevent this great advice from working. Because we know that gluten contains a gluteomorphine. It's a morphine that does attach to the opiate receptors, just like real morphine does, and it makes us high, it gives us a crash. So that advice is not going to help. You could eat all the soup all week. I'm going to make soup for all week, and I'm going to make this recipe in this article. And I love pasta, so I'm going to put pasta in there. And then you come home and you binge at night because you've been provoked. The craving pathways, which do include the opiate pathways, have been provoked. You've gotten a high, you've gotten a crash. You've gotten a high, you've gotten a crash. Your whole body has absorbed that white flour too quickly. You've gotten a glucose high and a glucose crash. And so you come home and you're exhausted and you're depressed and you're anxious and you stop on the way home. The survival instincts in your brain have just taken over. The craving pathways have taken over. You're not in the rational part of your brain. You're not in the part of the brain that has the brake system. So of course on the way home you stop. This part of the brain is not in control. It's the craving pathways. So I hope that helps. So many people internalize that as a personal failure night after night after night. And it's not. It's just your body responding naturally to a particular kind of provocation. Just like if you brush up against poison ivy, you're going to get a rash. And if you follow this kind of advice, you're going to get cravings and overeat. So I so much want people to know this is not your fault. This is not your fault. When you take apart an article like this and you see how they've twisted it just enough to keep you addicted, you know it's not your fault. Okay. Now here's another great piece of advice. I was practically out of my chair when I saw this one. It says, hang out with like-minded people. You know, I say that all the time. Get your mirror neurons engaged. So your mirror neurons will pull you forward gently, kindly, easily. If you are around people, if you have people that you can mirror, you can mimic, you can emulate, you can copy people, then it doesn't make any difference what's going on in the rest of your brain. You will be doing the healthy things that you've always wanted to do. You will have control of your food because you're around people who have control of their food. You're around wise people. You're around patient people. You're around compassionate, caring, kind people. And that's how you start to see yourself. Brilliant, brilliant, right in line with the research. Absolutely the core of why the HARP and the ARC are so successful. And then they twist it. And then they make it so that it'll make you worse. It'll worsen your food addiction. Because what kind of like-minded people do they tell you to get around? People who have the body that you want. It's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh no. Oh no. No, 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 no. So what they did was they put the cart in front of the horse. You can't get anywhere if your cart is here and your horse is back here and you want to go that direction. So first you get around kind people, smart people, people who are not dieting, and people who are not engaged in exercise bulimia, and people who are not doing extreme things. You get around people who are going to help you build a very comprehensive lifestyle of protection against the food industry and media. So this is just horrible. It's horrible advice. They start out with great advice, and then they twist it so that it'll make you worse. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, me, 100 pounds overweight, I'm going to go start hanging out with the skinny ones. How is that going to make me feel? Is it going to make me feel successful? No. And are those women probably, men, women, probably body obsessed? Possibly. But that is not the criteria. The criteria is, are they sensible? Are they research-based? Are they eating clean? Are they helping one another, building one another up? Or are they just obsessing about their appearance? Those are the criteria. Those are the criteria that you want to use when you're deciding which like-minded people you want to hang out with. You want to hang out with successful people, but success means that you're building a very nurturing lifestyle. And these extreme bodies are not the product of nurturing. They're the product of various kinds of eating disorders. Okay, so that was my example number 4. And here's number 5. Join a cheap online weight loss group. That was actually a piece of advice. So yeah, I don't really hardly even need to go into that. That is so ludicrous on its surface. Okay, so that is our first segment. Our first segment on general news, the dangers of weight loss tips. Let's just call it that. That was our first segment. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to tell our new viewers, this is Hidden in Plain Sight. It is Food Addiction Reset Television. I am Dr. Joan Ifland. I am a PhD in nutrition, specializing in food addiction. I have been in this field for 22 years. I am the lead writer and editor of this book, Processed Food Addiction. This is a textbook that was published by CRC Press earlier this year, and it just lays to rest the whole question about whether processed food addiction exists, and it also lays to rest what you do about it, which is you treat it like drug addiction. You get abstinent, you join a group of like-minded people, and you really enjoy yourself, because we're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives. So we got to make it fun. So this is what you're watching. Food Addiction Reset Television, and the program is Hidden in Plain Sight, Food Addiction. Okay. The next segment we're going to talk about has to do with how the food industry is exploiting women. So in the introduction to this segment, we talked in the introduction to the program, we talked about how the marketing people at the food industry target children, because they know that the younger you addict a person, the harder it will be for that person to give up the addiction. So you're teaching those craving pathways to, react, put out a lot of craving neurotransmitters at a very young age. So it's almost like that if you learn a language at a very young age, you will never forget it. Same idea. If you teach toddlers about addiction, they will never forget it. They will have to work very hard, as we work in the HARP and the ARC, to put a new protective layer of conditioning over the old layer of conditioning. So these fast food places especially know that if they can get a child to come to that place with their family and consume addictive substances there, that child will kind of mash up the ideas of love and security and family with those addictive substances. And that is very, very powerful. Thank you, Donna. I can see your comment. Thank you. I want to address what Donna said about my knowledge. It is such a pleasure. It is such a pleasure to be able to share this with you. I really want to recognize the team at Food Addiction Reset. Julie Bennett, Sheila Yount, and Ixel Katz. They are the ones who put the technology together so that I have a way to give you the knowledge that you can use to protect yourself. This is war. This is this massive predator just exploiting us. They exploit children, and they really exploit women. So they do really terrible things to us, like, their diet products. This is going to help you lose weight. It's a diet product, but it's all sugar and flour and caffeine and processed fats. It's the most fattening thing on the planet. And they give you enough to really stir up those craving pathways so that you're craving all the rest of the day. They put breakfast items on that are designed to really get you craving first thing in the morning. If they can get you craving at the beginning of the day, you will crave intensely all day long. So they tell us we don't have time to cook. They lie to us. They cover things up. They put deceptive labels on products. I mean, they are exploiting us right, left, center, for profit. For profit. They don't care about us one bit, except if they can get us to part with some money. So, as we said at the beginning of the program, last week was International Women's Day. And how did these food manufacturers celebrate us? By creating highly addictive, unbelievably toxic products with our name on them. So products for women. And a fast food restaurant changed their M into a W Now, I found a really good article on this. This is this is an article I would recommend that you read. So why is this so horrible? Well, of course, we know as food addicts why it's horrible. Because we get sucked in as women into thinking that these oppressors, and I know that sounds a little over the top, and I apologize for that. These processed food manufacturers are creating women acknowledging products because they want us to buy them. They want us to think that they're our friend. They want us to think that they're on our side. They want to manipulate us into feeling warm about them. It's horrible. It's horrible. Hi, Janice. So this is horrible. To be exploited this way, to be manipulated this way, it's really demeaning. It really says, wow, we think you're really stupid that you're going to fall for this, that you don't recognize that we are just exploiting you and manipulating you into feeling like, oh, we're on your side. So the article went on to say that this particular fast food restaurant, if it were on the side of women, it would be doing things like paying a living wage. It would be doing things like providing health care for mostly women employees. It would be providing daycare. So you see how false this is. And I do read in this article that it backfired, that people saw the cynicism, they saw the irony, they saw the falseness behind this really blatant attempt to co-opt women. Okay, now here's a really good example. I don't know if you are old enough to remember the cigarettes, Virginia Slims. So what happened in the tobacco industry started with the men. So they had this whole, you remember the Marlboro campaign, where manly men were smoking cigarettes, and they did terrible things like sometimes some men in the service and in military service, they would get a particular tattoos on their fingers, and that you would know that they had been in the military by this little tattoo on their finger. And so the cigarette companies, when they had a hand holding a lit cigarette, it would have those tattoos on the fingers. So manly men smoked. Wimpy men did not smoke. So if you wanted to be a manly man, you smoked. And it was diabolically brilliant, and it worked really well. So they got to the point where most men were smoking, and they kind of felt like they had saturated that market. So what did they do? They went after the women. They created a cigarette for women. And they diabolically connected it with being thin. So the name of the cigarette is Virginia Slims, and it was a long cigarette, and it was slimmer than the manly men's cigarettes. And they got women to smoke, and they endorsed a women's tennis tournament. So as you know, for most of our lives, women's sports have been underfunded. And so these tennis players opened their arms to the tobacco companies and let them name this tennis tournament after these cigarettes. And it worked tragically well. Women started smoking. They wove in the whole idea of rebellion. So this is the 1970s. It's the women's lib movement, and the tobacco companies co-opted the women's lib movement. They said, oh, well, be a rebel. Be a rebel. Hi, Maxine. So glad you're here. Be a rebel and smoke. So they manipulated women the same way they manipulated men. Independent women smoke. So the conformist women who are not liberated, they don't smoke. It's the liberated women who smoke. It's like, wow. And the liberated women are going to be sick before they can realize all their fun potential. So you see how often the food industry brings in those tobacco tactics to market. You guys might remember some years ago there was a fast food advertisement for the hungry man. And it showed just this army of men marching towards this fast food outlet. So you saw them, you see them, they do make products for men as well. It's all very manipulative, very manipulative. And of course, what they do to children is unmentionable. I'm going to have to find some articles about that. I don't know what will happen to these people. I do believe in heaven. I do believe that we die and we face our maker. And I guess I hold on to that belief because I do hope that at some point these people who are hurting us so profoundly and hurting children so profoundly, I hope that there will be kind of a day of reckoning for them. And maybe I'm wrong, and it's none of my business. I'm not in charge of punishing them. I'm just in charge of teaching you how to protect yourself. Okay, so we are rocking here. That was our segment on, it's just the segment of the newsletter called Interesting. And it is interesting. It's very interesting to learn how we're being manipulated, how we're being triggered, how we're being co-opted, how we're being marketed to. So that was the segment of our show and our newsletter called Interesting ... Catherine Leslie, I believe in karma. I do too. So I think the nice thing about this is that we can stay positive. I know this program is not as positive as I would like it to be. I'm working on that. I'm trying to think of some angles that would be more constructive. But in the meanwhile, I really do want you to know what is being done to you. What is being done to us? Men, women, and children. So that was the segment called Interesting. Janie, when you know better, you do better. Yes, Janie, that could be the motto for this. Right now, the motto of our show is knowledge in community is power. So yes, but when you know better, you do better. That would be a great motto for this. Okay, we're coming to our last segment. I'm going to stop again and identify the show for our new members, for the people who are just joining the show. I am Joan Ifland. I am a doctor of nutrition in the field of food addiction. I am the lead editor and lead writer of this textbook, Processed Food Addiction, which does finally show this is a real disease. It's a really serious disease. You have to build a program of recovery in order to recover from this disease. This isn't like alcoholism where you go to your meetings and you can resist and you can stop. This is not like that at all. Processed food addiction is much worse because it's so heavily promoted in our environments. The availability is so intense, the advertising, cheap prices, it's everywhere. It starts in childhood. The food industry hires neuroscientists to make the products very, very, very addictive. There are a lot of different products. They stimulate all the different addictive pathways in the brain. So processed food addiction is much more difficult to successfully put into remission than alcoholism. Certainly more difficult than smoking. So that's who we are. And the program is Hidden in Plain Sight, Food Addiction. The theme of the program is how food addiction is right in front of us, and the media would like to hide it from us because it's so profitable for them. Okay, last segment. Here we are coming towards the end. And this segment is called Research Missing in Action. Research Missing in Action. As you all know, I am research. The textbook has 2,000 studies cited in it. And I looked at somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 studies to pick the ones that were going to get into the textbook. And it is the research that will persuade your health professional that this is a real disease. It is the research that will persuade your health professional to take you seriously. When you come in and you say, I have addiction to processed foods, and I want everybody to go to Amazon, and I want you to print out the listing for this book and make sure that you have it. So the next time somebody says to you, oh, food addiction doesn't exist, you can pull out that printout and you can say, here's an entire textbook published by the most prestigious textbook company in the world, CRC Press. And just put an end to that conversation. You have armor now. Nobody can ever hurt you by denying your reality. Not anymore. You have a textbook on your side. So print out that page and make sure you have it with you all the time, and don't let ever anybody tell you that food addiction doesn't exist. Don't ever let anybody tell you again that this is all in your mind. Okay, back to topic. Okay, so this last study came out in 2018. So it's very, very new. And here's the title of the study, and then I'll tell you what it means. Self-Management for Sustained Surgical Success, a multi-component treatment for dysregulated overeating in bariatric surgery patients. Now, what is this? So what somebody did is they put together a program. It's an online program that helps people who've had the bariatric surgery, the weight loss surgery, and who are still overeating. It helps them. Now I'm stopping here because I'm wondering if anybody else gets what's wrong with this picture as profoundly as I think I get it. What is wrong with this picture? What is wrong with this picture? Well, what's wrong with this picture is these people should never have had the surgery. They were not appropriate candidates. I don't know anybody who is. That's just my personal opinion. But I have a lot of research to back that up. Bariatric surgery does not work. And this is being very carefully hidden from the public. So you may say, oh, no, but I know somebody, they had that surgery 5 years ago. Sometimes it takes 10 years, but almost all bariatric surgery patients regain the weight. Some of them never lose it in the first place. And some of them regain it rather quickly. And then some of them regain it over many, many years. But because it doesn't address the problem is that these poor craving pathways and these stress pathways and these thinking break pathways are being bombarded by the processed food industry and by media. That's the problem. In a capsule right there. And if you're going to cut out a piece of the stomach, well, it's like saying to a smoker, we're just going to take out some of your trachea. We're going to make this trachea a little bit smaller. It's going to be a little bit harder to breathe, but less smoke will get in there. So that is bariatric surgery. So why is this so tragic and yet so heartwarming at the same time? I will tell you. This is what these people should have had in the first place. Yes, Maxine, we're getting to the root of the problem in this program. This is what these people needed in the first place. They didn't need surgery. They needed an online program of comprehensive support. They needed to have the HARP. They needed to have our home addiction reset program. They needed to have the daily addiction reset community. They needed people around them who knew how to help them. in a really gentle, patient, compassionate, non-stressful, uplifting way. That's what they needed in the first place. And so this is wonderful. This is wonderful that that these people are getting the help that they should have had all along. Now, the tragedy is that their stomachs now will never allow them to sit down and have a normal meal. They will always have problems with fiber. They will always have, because they don't have room for fiber. And fiber is what keeps the 25 feet of intestines clean. So they're going to have intestinal problems, absorption problems. They're going to have to eat every 2 hours. I mean, if you don't have the surgery, you have this wonderful liberty. You have 4 or 5 hours between meals when you don't have to think about food. You get to go do fun things. You get to realize the dreams that you've already had. But once you've had this surgery, you will never have that. You will always have to go back every 2 hours and eat the second half of your meal. So you're doing exactly what we're doing, except you can only eat half a meal at a time. So if you know somebody who's considering bariatric surgery, please, please, please have them email me at foodaddictionreset@gmail.com, and I will send them the research. It's coming out now that bariatric surgery does not work for weight loss for the long term. Okay. But of course, what do I love about this study? It's a study that shows that the approach that we're taking at the HARP and the ARC, it works. So they're doing what we're doing, except I'm sure that we're doing it much better. Okay, that wasn't very modest, was it? Because we really have taken all the time. We have the thousands of studies that showed us what to do. And we have all the innovations that actually make a difference, that make a program successful. Okay, so that was our segment, Research Missing in Action. And you will be able to read this if you please sign up for the newsletter. You will get this in your email on Sunday. Okay, so that is worthwhile. These concepts are so new, and we are the only ones talking about them. I am so just fortunate to have Julie and Sheila and Excel, who are brilliant at taking these things that I have studied over 22 years and packaging them up so that you can learn how to protect yourself and your families. Learn how to protect your families. Learn how to protect them from developing food addiction. Learn how to protect them from becoming victims of the processed food industry. Okay. I'm so thrilled that you guys are here. Would you all please do me a favor and reach up there and hit the share button? So this is just a wonderful TV show. Maybe somebody that you know will sit down and watch it and it will save their lives. We do really benefit ourselves by getting this out. Catherine, thank you for coming. Okay, so what did we talk about today? We talked about a big long article. We did segment 2 of the 30 weight loss tips, and we showed how 5 of those tips would make you suffer worse from food addiction. We talked about, we didn't talk about the article in the Telegraph. I skipped it. Well, let me just do it, the 2-sentence summary. So the headline of this article is "No Firm Proof That a Healthy Diet Protects Against Dementia, Government Scientists Conclude." But then the article goes on to talk about how healthy diet keeps you mentally fit. So what happened there? I think an editor came along and said, no, you can't say something that bad about processed foods. Let's at least switch up the headline. I think that's what happened. But get the newsletter so you can read the whole article. It's fascinating. Okay, so then we talked about how women are being exploited by the food industry. And I am really quite tickled that backfired.
that we just saw straight through that. No, you're not going to manipulate us. We won't have it. Okay. And then in our last segment, research, missing in action, we talked about a study showing that bariatric surgery patients who are regaining their weight and more in spite of the surgery are responding to online education and support. So thank you so much for coming. I am so thrilled that you were here. Many, many blessings on you. Please, just figure out a gentle way to tell somebody about food addiction, even if it's just kind of a random topic, not about you, not about them. But let's get food addiction into our national discourse. Yes, Donna, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And next week, I will be in the UK at this time. Very excited about being in the UK and reaching that market. So it will be a pre-recorded program, but it will be at this time and in this place. And please come. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Take care.